Hi, welcome to the Unconquered podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm your host. My name is Sean Shakarami. My podcast is all about providing a free platform for other entrepreneurs and like-minded people to share their stories, tell a little bit more about themselves. As you know, creating content is time-consuming and costly. If you enjoy my podcast and my content, I'd ask that you please support me by buying my book, Resonate: Principles of Peak Performance. It's available on Amazon, and it's even free for Amazon Kindle users who have Kindle Unlimited. This book gives you an outline of principles that all but guarantee success in your personal and your professional life, and you'll learn a little bit more about my story as well. Also, I'm proud to announce a brand new partnership with Impact Health Share. If you're priced out of traditional health insurance, Impact Health Share might be able to save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in healthcare coverage for you and your family. And lastly, if you'd like my help to build a residual income for yourself, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to share these opportunities with you. I'll drop all the links below, and thanks again for tuning in. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Unconquered, Season 2, Episode 4. I am so stoked to have Adam Mauro, maybe better known as Mojo Rising. I loved your nickname, by the way, Adam. He's back on the show. He was a guest on Season 1, and today, I want to dive into the topics of how to get paid doing what you're passionate about. So a little bit about Adam is he has a similar backstory to me. He actually started his career in finance, was making good money for himself, had a comfortable life, but was waking up every morning unfulfilled. And I know exactly what that feels like, Adam. Starting from kind of that point, why don't you give a little bit of a background and give the short story, and then let's dive deeper, but the short story of how you kind of took an unfulfilled career into an incredible social media page. I love your Facebook. Adam is a travel entrepreneur, and Adam essentially travels the world and gets paid to do what he loves.
Thanks, Sean. I love being on these with you, brother. Like, the energy is always great and the love is always reciprocated, and as well as the respect. And, like you mentioned, starting out in my career after college, I was unfulfilled. It didn't take long. It wasn't like there was a honeymoon phase stepping into my career either. Like, I was unfulfilled from the rip. And here's the crazy thing is, graduating with a bachelor's degree in business management and concentration in entrepreneurial studies, right? You would think somebody with that on the resume might, be able to find a job relatively quickly. In 2012, as I was graduating, even with a not that bad job market at the time, after 2008 started getting better, it still took me 8 months to find a job roughly in my field of expertise, right? So I was grateful for finally finding a job. And again, as a college graduate too. So imagine somebody with less credentials coming out of the gate, really trying to find not a dead end job, trying to find a career, right? And so I step into my career field, and I'm in finance, and I am really unfulfilled, as my friend Sean mentioned. I was showing up. I do want to say this: we did some important work. But I would be lying to you if I said we were like making a difference in people's lives at the retail banking level. Like, it just wasn't, so, and long story short, I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't like being micromanaged. I didn't like the glass ceilings. I didn't like the idea of a 40-40 plan, 40 hours a week for 40 years to retire on 40% of the income that was barely enough to begin with. Now we're living in more of a 60-60 plan, 60 hours a week for 60 years. But even when it was 40-40, I wasn't thrilled about it, And so long story short, I got my licenses in finance. I already started in banking and was moving towards that retail side of business and the financial side of the business sector with banking. So I got my licenses. I went to New York Life. I became a registered representative with them. I work with variable products. So I got a little bit more exciting. I feel like the work got a little bit more impactful, but the system was still the same. Whether I was at New York Life or KeyBank or Bank of America or wherever, the corporate pyramid model was still the same. And New York Life is a great company. They're great. I mean, I love New York Life. I'm a customer of that company still, even though I'm far removed as a registered rep. But even then, there were people micromanaging you, even when they say you're kind of in an entrepreneurial endeavor. Really, you're not. Like, you don't own that book of business. New York Life does, and it's the same for any outfit out there, right? So I still felt like I had those golden handcuffs on. And it wasn't until a good friend of mine reached out to me from the college days and opened me up to the concept of what I like to call franchising of the 21st century, which is taking basically a proven business system that can operate online and globally, but owning the rights to promote it and sell it and profit from the distribution and revenue created. And that has led me to some cool ideas and cool concepts to where I am currently now, where I do, like Sean said, man, I get to travel the world with my friends and my family. I get to save an amazing amount of money doing it. And the nice little cherry on top is it has generated a residual income that has allowed me to kind of escape the financial matrix, if you will, and kind of earn a certain level of, I guess you could call it freedom, financial freedom, if you will. But here's the thing is there's levels to that, right? But what I'm excited about is we're just getting started as travelpreneurs. We're just scratching the surface, and it's already been so amazing. Like, imagine where we can take this thing in the years and decades to come, right? And so it's just been a really cool journey. But I will say this, it has been one of trial and error and failing forward to finding something that I am passionate about, that is easy to talk about, that offers undeniable value to those that are open to looking at it. You know what I mean? And so that's really where the rubber has met the road for me. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Sean.
So, one of the things that you first touched on was the 9 to 5 grind. I call it the 5 to 9 grind because in my line of business, CPA, I don't really practice as a CPA anymore, but when I did, I was waking up 5 o'clock in the morning and starting work and not really ending my day until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Now, I would take an hour or so off in the evenings to be with my daughter, eat dinner with my family. But even then, I'm not going to get to the neuroscience of it all, but the brain and your focus is sticky. So even like taking an hour off from highly complex, work that requires level 3 thinking, it actually just takes an hour for the brain to decompress to even enjoy that time with my family. So little to say, I wasn't even enjoying any type of quality of life. And I hate to say it, but in today's corporate environment, it is no longer 9 to 5. 9 to 5 does not cut it. It is a 5 to 9, 24/7, emails pinging, phone ringing, better answer when the boss or partner calls. If you're really gonna climb that corporate ladder to where your salary and your bonuses are meaningful and growing year in and year out. And even then, I'll say with the layoffs, and with the economy in the state it is now, that's not guaranteed. Not to say that network marketing is guaranteed either, but it does give you some semblance of control over your earnings and the amount of impact that you're providing to people. The thing that I think really stands out to me about your story is the trials and tribulations, but also the amount of work that you've put in to develop yourself. And that's because every time I talk to you, man, there's not a negative word, a negative thought that comes out of your mouth. And look, I'm smart enough to know that doesn't mean that bad things don't happen to you. But the way that you're able to reframe any of the negativity and find the bright side of it, why don't you kind of start there? I really truly believe the mindset is the foundation for any type of success, whether it be in a corporate career or in a network marketing role.
I love how you led us there, Sean, with this, because it is such an important thing for us to examine. But because it's so intangible, sometimes it's a hard thing for us to talk about and articulate because it can be in a very emotional driver, right? This is one thing that I have learned over time. And I think I can't say that one person necessarily taught me this in its entirety, as much as I picked things up from people that I love and respect along the way to kind of form my own wisdom on it. But, self-talk, Sean, although you and I are talking to each other right now and we talk to each other quite often, and you probably talk to your wife even more often than me and your daughter just as often as that, right? But the person that any of us talk to the most in this life is ourselves. That's self-talk. And you got to be careful what you tell yourself because you will believe you. You know what I mean? If it's self-deprecating, you will believe you. You will start, you talk the talk. Eventually, you're going to start walking the walk, right? And so I be very mindful of my own self-talk. And sometimes I even fall short and I'm like, oh, Adam, you idiot. Like, but I got to catch myself. I'm like, no, Adam, you got to learn from that one. You're not an idiot now because you know better now, right? Whatever it may be. So the self-talk is really important. But then also, and this may sound cliche because it is, but it still works, right? Attitude determines or altitude. You know what I mean? Winston Churchill has a great quote. I've been living my life by this quote since the first day I heard it. And he said, the great Winston Churchill said, success is nothing more than moving from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And you got to be your own biggest fan. You got to be. The world is not going to follow somebody that's timid, that's someone that talks ish about themselves. You got to be your own biggest fan before you start finding anyone that's going to believe in you anyway, right? And so in that, if you're a fan, let's say your favorite basketball player is playing and you're their biggest fan, you're not talking crap to them. You are cheering them on. So sometimes you got to be your own cheerleader. You got to be your own fan. Right. And so I've kind of leaned on that when there have been times where there hasn't been a lot of positivity around me. Sometimes you got to be that light you're looking for. But ultimately, it's this, whether it's business or sports or relationships, no matter what it is, if it's anything that it takes two or more to tango, right, there's got to be a certain level of leadership there, always in both parties, ideally, but at least in one. And when it comes to that leadership, if you ever see a leader with a poor attitude, I'm telling you, they're not a leader. They're just in the spotlight right now. They're just the one with the light is on them right now. But real leaders, that attitude, you can't shake it. It is unshakable. And I will say this, I've been tested plenty of times where that attitude and that posture was tested to be shaken. And this is just me and Sean. I know we share belief systems on this as well. And I'm not saying that everyone does nor everyone has to. But I will say this is I really do lean on a foundation that's even stronger than my own wisdom and understanding. And that's one of God's. Like, I am a believer. I love God. That is my foundation. When things get so hard and so trying where now I'm worried about my own strength, I'm going right to the big OG, in prayer. And that's one thing I mentioned to my friends and my team too. If they're dealing with frustrations, whether it's business or otherwise, I'm like, well, you're coming into the world now, but have you gone to God yet? Have you talked to God about it yet? Most times we're like, well, no, not yet. Because typically if we talk to God about it first, you don't even need to go to homie. You know what I mean? Because God got the answer for you. You know what I mean? And so, but I will say, to kind of just wrap it all in a bow, as it relates to the attitude we have to carry with us, we attract what we are. And we can become whatever we choose to be. Meaning, if we're not what we want to be yet, we haven't attracted what we want yet, we don't need to stay there. We can choose to become what we want to be. And for some people, it's a faster process. Some people, it's a slower process, right? But I will say this is our emotions and the way we perceive them and the way we allow them to then interject in our lives is an absolute choice. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. We are the masters of our ship as it relates to how we perceive our emotions. And if you can learn to control the way you perceive those things, you are no longer reacting like a chicken with your head cut off. You are almost like that Buddhist, in the temple Zen-like, you know what I mean? And so that's what I would really say is like that positive self-talk, knowing that your emotions are within your control if you choose them to be, and then always monitoring that attitude, whether you're around yourself, just around yourself or around others, because people are looking to see if you're the type of person they want to link their ship to. And you don't want to follow a leader that's manic and emotional and doesn't know, you know what I mean? One day life's great, the next day life's awful, right? Don't take advice from people who hate life 6 days a week. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, no, one, I totally agree. And I'm so glad you brought up the faith part of your journey. Not only is that just so important, for me, it's crucial. It's vital. I've been knocked down, facing some serious trials and tribulations over the last 6 months, and I just remind myself that the valley is indicative of the peak. And what I mean by that is, so we just got my daughter a trampoline. Thank you to our next door neighbors. They upgraded their trampoline, so we got ours as a gift. And when I watch her jump, if you want to go as high as possible on that trampoline, what you have to do is go down as far as you can for the resistance and the tension in those bands to propel you higher up. So, you know, it's a great illustration of if you're finding yourself in one of those valleys and it's the lowest of the low, then that means that the next peak is the highest peak that you're ever going to find. But you have to do the work, and you have to do the reflection, and you have to be in prayer to get to that blessing.
Wow.
You know, one of the things that I've brought up in my own social media content is the voice that is in your head is going to control the voice that you use with other people. Or even better stated, the way you speak to other people is a direct reflection of the voice that of your own inner voice. And if you're one of those people, which I went through this hypercritical, that was one of the biggest things I had to work on in my mid and early 20s. Was I held myself to very high standards, and I could be hypercritical of other people. And the reason, looking back, that I was so hypercritical was because that's how I spoke to myself. And once I got down the path of learning, and a lot of this was through prayer, which, guys, I want to use the word meditation because I think so many people are uncomfortable. Well, Christians don't meditate. Yes, they do. The word meditate is in the Bible. The word prayer is meditation. That is what prayer is. Now, is there a difference between meditating on the Word of God and meditating in a godly way and opening your mind to the Holy Spirit and to aligning yourself to God's will? And is that different maybe than from other Eastern forms of theology where you're just trying to clear your mind and open it up to anything and everything? Yes. But prayer is a form of meditation. It's, in my opinion, the highest form of meditation. And from that spot of prayer then becomes more about sitting still and listening and not so much about speaking.
Wow.
The Bible even says the Holy Spirit will pray the words for you. You know, like so many people go and they do exactly the opposite of what Jesus said. And look, I was one of them. Babble, God, I need this. God, please give me that. God, please do this. Please do that. And there's a Bible verse in the New Testament where Jesus says you don't need to go on and on in your prayers. But he doesn't say that the prayer stops after you say you're one of those people. I had a friend who got really into the Lord's Prayer. And I love it. It's a beautiful prayer. You know, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those trespassing against us. Deliver us from evil. Yours is the kingdom forever and ever. But the prayer doesn't stop there. Your speaking stops there. Now you go listen. Okay? Because otherwise it's just a ritual. I spit off that prayer in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And if that's all you're doing, saying, okay, I prayed. No, you didn't. You did a form of religious ritual, just like the Pharisees, just like the Sadducees, just like the people that Jesus rebuked. If you're going to be a follower of Jesus, you have to get to that next level. And that next level is where I believe that you're going to find success in your identity in God, in your purpose that God has for your life. And it may or may not be in a network marketing aspect, but one of the reasons I try to drill those points every chance I get is because I found when I go into those deep prayers, those deep states of meditative prayer where I am not speaking, I am just listening, and whatever speaking I do is from my inner voice through the Holy Spirit to God, that's when my cup becomes filled, and then I can go do the things that need to be done to not just bring value to myself and my own family, but to help impact lives in other places, which is why I do like network marketing. Is it in its truest form, when done right, follows a biblical model.
Amen.
Because it is a community of people aligned around a purpose. And if it's the right company with the right service or right product, then it should bring value. And whatever value you're imparting on other people, you're sharing in it. It's all about shared success. It's all about shared value.
Really well said. Really well said.
And, so I guess my question for you is, because I feel like I'm just now kind of getting to that point of, once you hit that point, what's your wisdom to apply those lessons and actually start imparting the value and letting the blessings start to overflow?
Yeah. Well, and you know what's really cool about that, Sean, is that's a very exciting time. Whether you own your slice of the pie in a network marketing business, or it's mission work, or it's just, you want to have better relationships again with your family or with friends, or I mean, taking in the game of basketball, whatever it is, there's a transition that happens there with what you were just saying. And that transition happened for me as well. If you stand around the campfire long enough, there's going to be a spark that catches, right? And so when it happened to me, and again, this is many years, well, geez, not even that long ago, really. It was less than a decade ago, right? But this is what happened to me. The business went from my head to my heart. When I first, and we'll use network marketing as the example, right? Because it is such a great business model, and it is used all around the world. And the sharpest business minds of the world are huge believers and supporters in it. Like, there's just too many sharp people that know what they're talking about, that support the model, for me to believe a negative uncle that, you know what I mean, that doesn't know his head from his butt. Yeah, I just can't. I'm sorry. I got to go where it makes sense, right? But that being said, as we stay kind of present in the network marketing model, and then having that epiphany, if you will, that revelation, where the mission that you initially started it with goes from your head to your heart, where now it's not about necessarily helping people lose weight, or maybe helping people save a lot of money on travel, or maybe, helping people make their skin look better, or whatever it is, right? You realize that the mission has a lot less to do with the service of the product as it does the people it's intended to serve. And then we have another step, and that is the one that is ready to level up in life. Maybe not the customer per se that's ready to enjoy the product or service, right? But now we're also talking about that person that sees a product or service that they like, but they also see a light at the end of the tunnel, or an end result that would be like advantageous to them and what they want out of life. And for me personally, it was the financial freedom. When I finally decided to start dabbling in network marketing, and when I say dabble, I mean like my first 6 months, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't make a single sale. You know what I mean? I really, again, the business hasn't gone from my head to my heart yet. I was just looking at it like, hey, like, we're selling protein shakes here. They're organic protein shakes. Like, I didn't realize that it was about people yet. But when I did, and the reason why I realized it was about people is because I started getting around the right people. My buddy Jake, who had put me onto the idea, and God bless him, and I love him, we still talk to this day, right? He didn't have the answers, and the good book says, if you seek, you shall find. If you knock, the door shall be answered. All you have to do is ask, right? And so I finally started asking questions, like curious as a kid. I was curious as a child. Like, I was just like, what does this mean? What does that mean? How do we get to this? How do we do that? And my buddy Jake was like, I don't know. I don't have the answers for you, bro. I'm like, well, you got to put me on the phone with somebody that does. And that's when I met Steve Zeller, who was my first real mentor in life or in business. I learned so much from that gentleman. I love him to death. But again, I asked, and I didn't get the answer I wanted. So I asked somebody else, and I asked, and I asked, and I asked, and I asked. And much like network marketing, right, in this endeavor, if you're looking to make an income, whether a meaningful income or a part-time income, or just, hey, beer money on the weekends, right, whatever it is, you got to ask. 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 You got to ask your teammates, hey, what does this mean? How do I do this properly? You got to ask your sphere of influence or your network, hey, can you have 5 minutes to take a look at an idea I'm really excited about? Like, you got to be willing to ask. But here's the thing is, as at least I'm not speaking for just myself, but I'm not trying to overstretch either. Everyone has a different upbringing, but I got to think I wasn't the only child that got told no at least 50% of the time, right? Mommy, I want to do that. No. Daddy, I want to do that. No. No. And I'm not, and my parents love me very much, and I love them very much. They're a big part of my why. But I'm just saying, like, we're getting programmed, even by the people that we love, to hear no, right? And eventually you just don't like hearing that word, man. I don't. I can only hear so many no's before I'm like, man, okay, like, I want to stop asking. But here's the thing. If your vision for what something can bring to you and your family is big enough and strong enough, the obstacles matter so much less. They're so much more insignificant. And so I'm boiling back around, bringing it back around to, what is your why? What is your purpose for wanting to do something? Now, when I started in network marketing, it was, I want to make a little bit of extra money. That's what it was. And hey, protein shakes, cool, whatever. But when the business went from my head and my heart and I realized it was about people, I was like, well, you know what? Really? If you were to ask me what I really want out of this life, man, one big thing, I'd love to retire my mom. No one even asks you that stuff. In a corporate pyramid, no one's going to ask you what you want out of this life. They're going to be like, what's your future in this company in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see yourself? They're not going to ask you, what's your biggest dream? They're not designed, because corporate pyramids are not designed to give you your dreams. They're not designed that way. They're designed for us to, sell our labor and energy and time to then maximize the profits of the shareholders, right? And the board. Like, that's what your purpose is in the corporate pyramid.
Yeah, that's because the pyramid isn't designed for you to fulfill your dreams. It's designed for you to help other people fulfill their dreams.
Oh, without a doubt. And what's most sinister to me about that is a couple things. Number one, everyone's expendable, right? Everyone's an expendable piece of the chessboard. I don't like that. There's no real, no one's working towards equity in the project as much as they're just working towards, I need to squeeze enough pennies out of this corporation to be able to pay my bills. The corporation, on the other hand, saying, I need to squeeze as much energy and labor and time out of this person while still having plenty to pay our shareholders at the end of the quarter. And that's where the dream gets skewed, because it's no longer the dream of the collective as much as it's the dream of the few, again, the shareholders, right? And that just never really jived well with me. Now, the reason why I like the network marketing model, and yeah, sure, it can be in a pyramid as well, right? It can be in a circle. There's a million different ways you can draw the model, right? But for simplistic terms, we'll draw it in the same shape that we're drawing corporations. But the difference here is this. Number one, every glass ceiling of additional income is solely self-imposed, meaning there's no gatekeeper at the gate saying, no, you can't, you're not in the club, you can't come in. You mentioned this earlier, Sean. You can make as much or as little money as you would like as a network marketing professional. There is no limit to that, as there is to somebody maybe trading time for money for $20 an hour. But the big picture is, again, as you want to kind of level up in your level of income or impact or leadership or influence or whatever your driving desire is, right? Those limitations are totally self-imposed in the person, right? And what's cool about the network marketing model as well is it behooves one another to help each other succeed, as opposed to competing with each other for the next one seat in the promotion, right? Like, if you and I, if we're working in the same corporate pyramid, we have the same position, we're peers. And then our manager says, oh, there's one seat available for this next promotion. You and I are now competing. We're no longer friends, right? Like, now I got something to say about you, right? You got something to say about me. When in network marketing, the next level of income has an infinite amount of seats. And the only prerequisite to get there is, are you willing to do the activity to get there? There's no, well, my dad is this guy, can I get there? Like, there's no promotion like that. It's just, hey, what's your productivity looking like within your group? Oh, that qualifies you to make this. I love that. The playing field is completely even, and you can get what you're worth. And you'll find, as you continue to climb up, right, the pyramid or whatever you want to call it, the seats start opening up. The ceiling opens. There's more seats now available. Those seats at the top levels of income are not finite, and they're not indicative of somebody else saying, yeah, you can have that seat. If you want that seat and you do the work long enough, well enough, you can have that seat. And then lastly, for me, the ultimate goal of financial freedom and time freedom. To me, that's a worthy ideal. That's a worthy goal to pursue with our time in this physical existence on Earth. It's worthy. It's worthy of our time. It's worthy of our energy. It's worthy of failing forward a couple times, if that means that's what's going to get you there. And here's why. We were talking about how it was when I was working within the corporate pyramid of New York life, right? I had more freedoms than I did the bank, but not much more. And an example is this. I wrote my first real big piece of business. It was my first real rollover at New York Life. It was amazing. I helped this family solidify their retirement, which felt really, really good. But I also made a really good commission. My commission was about 12 grand on that one rollover. Not bad for the swipe of a pen. I went to Miami with my friends for a few weeks. Again, single guy, young guy. I was like, yo, man, we just wrote a big commission. Let's go to Miami for a week. Let's have a great time. So we all pitched in. We all went to Miami, right? I did not get paid while I was away. I was away from the office and I was spending that money. I was not getting paid. In network marketing, for instance, a few of my friends and I, we had a boys' week in Puerto Rico. Now, in Puerto Rico, I'm not in the office, right? I did take a few phone calls, but they weren't real business calls. It was just, just taking phone calls. I didn't do any real work. Yet my time away, including my bonus that month, I maybe made about $1,200 on my week away in Puerto Rico, and I wasn't working because I had laid down the groundwork a year prior. And what's cool about network marketing, if you do the job right once within a good compensation model, you're going to get paid over and over and over and over and ultimately create a liquid cash flow. Cash flow really can help create financial freedom. The problem with cash flow is, one, it takes a little bit of time to build up. But number two, the barriers of entry to create meaningful cash flow is quite high. Real estate, buying a franchise that costs $500,000, if we want to buy McDonald's or something. So the average person can't participate in those type of cash flow generators. But a $200, partnership fee for the year or less, many companies offer less of a partnership fee, to then be able to go out there and get your global slice of the pie when your entire business is online, like no overhead, no hamburgers, no ketchup, no McDonald's University, none of that stuff. Like, it really is a no-brainer. But you have to have that graduation moment, like you were talking about, Sean. You have to have that moment where the pendulum shifts. You are no longer kind of the same creature you were before, because now you have a new perspective. And with a new perspective comes new ideas, new possibilities. And I personally chose to follow those into network marketing, which has allowed me to, fire my boss, pursue my dreams full time, and get paid to travel, which has been the cherry on top, because I love travel, right?
And that leads me to a couple things that I want to make sure I touch on here. Number one is my testimonial of using your service. As an entrepreneur, I do have to travel, and that's really how we met. Is I have a young budding startup, and when travel comes up, I don't always have the cash flow in my business to spend $500, $600 on a hotel room, and then going through the normal travel sites or whatever on my limited budget. It's going to put me in dangerous places, like the Motel 6 in the bad part of town where I don't want to be. And it also increases my costs on other things because I can't be close to the meeting place or to the event or to the conference. So I have to spend, $30, $40 on Uber rather than walking across the street. And, this is a real life testimonial. Is I'm going to be in Las Vegas next week. I'm going to be giving a keynote speech at the Education 2.0 conference, kind of talking about a lot of the things that we're talking about today. So this is a great warm up for next week. And not only that, I'll be on a couple panel discussions at the Health 2.0 conference. And it's really important for me to be there. It was an investment from my company. And, there was a time where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it there. And I was looking at hotel costs. And anyway, using your service, I got 4 nights in Las Vegas within walking distance of Caesar's Palace, where the conference is going to be, for $125.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, it does produce value. It helps people in their real life. And I for a lot of people, travel is a luxury. This isn't even a luxury trip. This is like, okay, if I can't make it, I'm not just wasting opportunity. I've wasted, dollars in the past to lead up to this.
Yeah.
And, the service really, really kind of saved my butt there. The other thing is, I like to think of network marketing as a cube or a square, because if you think about the number of seats, they're unlimited. It goes up. It's not compressing like this. Now, there might be seats that are not filled yet, but the seats are still there.
Right, exactly.
Now, one of the things that is similar between both of us is It took us both about 10 years to break the conditioning of what you think of as a normal or good or even successful career in the corporate world. That's the pyramid. In fact, I wrote a book. This was before I joined any network marketing at all. I wrote this book, and you can see I I displayed and illustrated the corporate pyramid from a consulting or like investment banking perspective, which was my history. And a real life story is a lot of people don't know in public accounting, in consulting. If you think of like the big four accounting firms, the PricewaterhouseCoopers, the Deloittes, the E's and Y's, the KPMG's, even the Grant Thorntons that where I used to work, is there's a recruiting season where they've actually like almost like NCAA sports type rules where, they start recruiting on this day and it ends this day. I remember being at TCU, there was a partner from Deloitte. I believe it was Deloitte. It could have been one of the other ones. So I don't want to like name drop too much, but one of the partners from the big four came to campus, took about 10 to 20 of the young up and coming women, CPAs, and they went on a shopping spree and they each got like $500 to buy themselves a new purse or a new dress. And I've got to do some cool stuff like that too. My first job, they put me up on a private jet for the interview. Guess what? When I got that job, I never saw that private jet ever again, because the whole strategy is at that lower entry level. Those big companies have to take in hundreds, thousands of what they perceive to be the top talent. And here's another secret, is what they consider or perceive as top talent is really not the top talent. I was told that I did not get jobs because and this was down the line. This wasn't like, oh, you didn't get the job and hey, what did I do wrong? This was like 3 or 4 years later, because it's a small world, and you as if you fail forward, and just because you don't get a job, you might end up somewhere. God might have something even better for you in store. So there's a time period where I didn't get some of those accounting jobs, and what I did get was an investment banking job. And so I ran back into those people 3, 4 years later, like, oh, Sean, wow, so glad, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him, I said, yeah, everything worked out, and I got where I wanted to go, but like, why didn't you hire me when I interviewed for your position? Why do you want to, why do you want me to reapply now? And they're like, well, we really target students with like a 3.5, 3.6. You had like a 3.7, 3.8 GPA. And that's because we want people who are smart, but not smart enough to ask questions.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
Yeah.
They're looking for worker bees, and they bring in very intelligent, competent people who are willing to sacrifice their personal life for the opportunity, for the prestige of saying, I work for this great big firm.
Mm-hmm.
And then guess what? 70% of them get spit out in the first, they don't even see a promotion. And then the 20, 30% who make it to the next level, another 80% of those get spit out. It's well known. A lot of people go into audit. As soon as they hit audit manager, as soon as they put manager on their LinkedIn, they're going somewhere else to become a controller, or maybe even a CFO somewhere else. It is designed like this, and you are literally giving up 60 to 80, sometimes 80 plus hours of each and every week, 52 weeks out of the year, for nothing more than your own and third-party validation.
Yeah.
That's a steep price to pay if you think about it.
Ooh.
Because secrets of the 1%, one thing I just learned a couple weeks ago was, I'm really big. I love Tony Robbins. I love Jim Rohn, Ed Milet, you name them. Secrets of the 1%. Jim Rohn, Herbalife. His family is still getting checks cut from Herbalife. All those big speakers, influencers that you see like on the TikTok videos and the Instagram reels, almost all of them get their checks cut by some kind of network marketing, multi-level marketing company. That's how they made it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And you know what? It's not something to be frowned upon. It's actually something that should be encouraging, because if you are kind of like me and one day you do want to take a stage and one day you do want to be a motivational speaker and have impact through the way that you speak and the way that you can elevate the atmosphere and the energy around you, guess what? You have to have a big network, and you have to be confident enough in yourself that you can go start conversations with 10, 20 people a day
yeah, yeah,
and have that compound. And look, 80% of those conversations, you may be the only one imparting value. There may be no value imparted at all. And you have to be okay with that.
mm,
And I'm not going to sit here and say that that's easy. It's not easy to be told no a lot. It's not easy for some of your friends to say, "Hey, like, your social media now that it's now that you're promoting a network, or now that I know that you're selling products or whatever." Yeah, you're gonna lose some friendships, but you know what? They weren't even really your friends in the first place.
exactly.
And the last thing that you really touched on is my biggest platform, at least from a professional setting, is LinkedIn. And I get a number of young entrepreneurs or young people wanting to get their feet wet in entrepreneurship. And 9 out of 10, maybe even 99%, they're overthinking it. They don't have enough life experience, because what I did was a huge risk, and I'm still going to see if it's going to pay off. Hindsight's always 2020, so I don't judge myself. But had I known now, back then, I may have done things a little bit differently. And the reason I bring it up is everyone that I talk to who approaches me on LinkedIn for like coaching or just to pick my brain on my experiences, they always think they need to bring some new novel concept, some breakthrough, groundbreaking idea, product, service to the marketplace for it to be successful. And that's not the truth. And unless you have 10, 20 years of experience in that industry and have a foundation of resources and investment, I would tell you to steer clear from taking that type of risk. But if you want to learn the real life skills that will help get you to that level where you can go into a larger entrepreneurial venture with more confidence and more certainty that it will work, is learn how to sell a validated, tried, true, proven product or service through a network market. Because like you said, $100, $200 to become a business partner, it's the lowest barrier of entry. And even if it fails, okay, you lost $200. And look, with a little bit of effort, you can probably find a way to make your money back, so that even if it fails, you're zero sum.
Right, right, right. Well, and that's the gift and the curse of the opportunity. Because again, let's look at it this way. Let's say you and I decided, hey, we're gonna open a McDonald's. We're paying just the franchise tag alone is gonna be $250,000. And now we're not talking about,
Yeah.
staffing, we're not talking about marketing material, we're not talking about inventory and what's it cost to keep the lights on and payroll and all these things. Like, we're just talking about just owning the name, just having the right to sell the burger. That barrier to entry is vast. Most people cannot participate, right? Now the barrier to entry to launch a network marketing business, again, $100, few $100 at most, right? Now, yes, that's a beautiful thing where now anyone can do it, right? A 16-year-old with an allowance can do it, right? But that being said, I would have a much harder time if I had a bad day owning a McDonald's. The manager calls out and I got to go in there and flip burgers. I'm not saying I quit. I'm calling you, Sean, bro. We got to get down to the Mickey D's, bro. Half the people didn't even show up. We're not even open yet. The breakfast line is out the door. We got to go. We're showing up. You know what I mean? But you put $250,000 in it right off the rip. But you just put $100 in to launch your own network marketing business. I don't care how broke you are. That's still easy to walk away from. And so that's why, again, we were talking about it earlier in the episode, the importance of having a strong why, because that will pull you. You'll be like, yo, the $100 that I used to launch this my business 6 months ago, I don't miss that money anymore. The emotional tie to that measly $100 is gone. It's been gone. right? So I'm not even doing it for the hundo I put in. Now I'm doing it because, again, my why, again, retiring my mother, being a full-time father, a full-time husband, traveling the world, leaving a legacy behind. Those are the things that pull me. And if you have a big enough why, just like a planet in orbit, it'll create its own gravitational pull, where you'll get closer and closer just the longer you stay in orbit of it, whether you're moving quickly or not. Because eventually we all have that day where we say, okay, what do I got to do to pour it on, to make it happen, to go from 0 to 100? You know what I mean? But you got to stay in the fight long enough. You really do. But to your point, Sean, there's a lot of great opportunities out there. And there's validity in all of them. But if you can learn from a group of people that have already done it, a proven way to promote and sell a product or service with validity and a track record, you're on the right path. You just got to now develop the skills that are going to allow you to have success. Because our man Jim Rohn says it. He says, don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. Because if you develop the skills, now the problems are no longer problems. But if you never develop the skills to overcome the obstacle, that obstacle is going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the day after that and the day after that. It will always be your barrier to the entry of the next phase of your life. So it's one of those things where you really have to be willing to invest in yourself and treat that 100 or 2 or 3 or whatever it costs to launch your business online. Treat it as if you launched a $250,000 McDonald's. You know what I mean? Where the bad days aren't bad enough for you to give up, because there will be a few of them. But I will also say this: you stay the course long enough with a good attitude, the good days will far outweigh the bad. And you'll actually get something meaningful out of the process, which hopefully for those that are looking for it is that true freedom, Yeah.
And I think the big takeaway here is life is about relationships with people.
Yes.
And the way you're able to communicate. I was one of the youngest ever directors at Grant Thornton, and it had very little to do. In fact, what promoted me to director was not my work ethic, was not my ability in the spreadsheets and the models. In fact, you focus too much on those technical skills, they're going to hold you back more than they propel you forward. And the reason is because you talked about the glass ceiling, the people on top, my bosses didn't have the technical skills I had. They didn't need them. They didn't want them. They wanted someone below them like me to have them. What broke me through that glass barrier was building enough relationships in my industry where I started selling work. I sold $2 million of work in 10 months before I left. That was more than some partners at the firm. But I didn't sell services because I was so good at what I did. I sold services because I made relationships. I developed trust, and people trusted me and they liked me. That is the most important skill in the world, is to learn how to develop trust and actual relationships with other people. And that's what you learn in network marketing. So maybe your dream is to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs one day. Hey, we need a good person up in those positions. You aren't going to get there because you make the best models in the world. You're going to get there because you know and help enough people and have enough relationships with people to get there. So, Adam, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I think this was just value packed, just so much here. We could go on for hours, and I'm sure we'll have another podcast and another session. I just want to conclude today that, to my audience, you are capable of way more than you think you are. You can read my book to understand all the adversity I had to overcome. You can listen to people like Adam. If you're ready to take action to get to that next level, I'm going to drop our contact information down below in the description of the video. Please reach out. At the end of the day, it's not about selling you on a service. It's not about selling you on a business partnership. It's about meeting you, getting to know you, and helping you find an avenue to achieve your dreams. If we could be a part of that longer than just a conversation, great. But if it's just a 5-minute conversation to plant a seed and get you headed down the path, we're both happy to do that. Thanks so much. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends and family. Till next time, I'm Sean. Adam, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, brother.